I am Councilman Ron Nirenberg. I serve District 8 in Northwest San Antonio. It's a very diverse district. It's also a center of growth. And if you look at a population map of San Antonio in terms of density, it is now the center of San Antonio, right there at I-10 and Colonnade. It is a vastly growing sector of the city. So I'm here to talk about a particular area of interest of mine, which is water. If you look at across our region and you listen to the commentary from different economists or environmentalists or people who just observe politics, the chief thing on their mind right now is water. Certainly we're in a drought. The Dallas Federal Reserve Bank just recently released a report in December that cited water scarcity as the #1 economic threat for our state of Texas. And if you observe national politics, you've seen now that water and water security has risen to the level of homeland security issues. And if you look at our global condition, you will see that in 2015 we are ending UN's water decade. We are no better off, however, because at the end of this UN water decade, we have half of the globe's population living in a state of water scarcity, either physical, meaning that there is no source of water, potable water near, or economic, which means that they lack the infrastructure or the economic tools to retrieve that water. So what are we doing in San Antonio about that condition? Over the last many decades, we've been facing water issues from one aspect to another, and we have been working on it quite diligently. I know we have SAWS here. Sandy Wolf is here. She works in the government affairs part of SAWS, the Department of SAWS. What we have done over the last several years, we give credit to the fact that our founding fathers of San Antonio settled in this region over 400 years ago and created a very strategic economic advantage for us as a region. We are situated over the Edwards Aquifer, which is a single source aquifer, the largest of its kind in the globe. It is a cheap source of water. It's also a very easily and efficiently replenished source of water. We get our vast majority of water, it used to be all of it, from the Edwards Aquifer. Today we get about 90% of our water supply from the Edwards. As we know, as the years have progressed, our population has grown, our demands on water have changed, the climate has changed, so we are looking to diversify our water supply. Things that SAWS has done over the last 30 years, at the same time we're protecting our Edwards. We have done very well in conservation efforts. Our CEO, Robert Puente, likes to cite the fact that despite our population growth over the last 25 years, we use no more water in San Antonio than we did 25 years ago. Whether he's right or wrong to the dot on that, we don't know, but at least he's in the ballpark because we have seen the growth of our recycled water facilities. We've also seen our gallons per capita water use drop dramatically from around 200 gallons per capita to about 124, 125, up to a height of 143 a few years ago. So we've done very well in conservation. We've also diversified our water supply. You're probably well aware of the checkered history that San Antonio has in terms of water projects. We've all heard of Applewhite. We've heard of the failed negotiation to get water from Canyon Lake. Today we actually do get Canyon Lake water, not as much as we would have had we gone for the full Monty on that. But we have additional water supplies that include the Edwards. As it stands today, though, however, we still get the vast majority of our water from the Edwards. So what are we doing about that today? A couple things. Over the last 15 years, we have been protecting the Edwards Aquifer with conservation easements, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. We are recognizing the fact that over the next 25 to 30 years, we're expecting a doubling of the San Antonio population. At the same time, we're seeing the climate change. We all know we're in a state of drought, but we are seeing a very volatile region in terms of climate become even more volatile as the years go by. All that being said, we need to continue to conserve, we need to continue to diversify our water supply. So SAWS has a poster here about the Vista Ridge, and I'll talk about that in a second. However, the first part of this is the Edwards Aquifer. It will remain the bedrock of our water supply, and so we're working diligently with the citizens of San Antonio to protect it. Over the last 15 years, we've passed propositions that take 1/8% of our sales tax and devote it to buying buying conservation easements over the Edwards Aquifer. We've done that to the tune of 120,000 acres of property protected over the Edwards Aquifer over the last 15 years. That's an incredibly important thing. According to a sustainability study that was just completed, that is the equivalent of 50% of the water recharge area that we will need in 50 years from now. So we're talking about long-term water security. We want to protect our main source of water. We have done that very well. The sustainability study also showed that despite our diversification efforts and our conservation efforts, if we continue to do that, and we continue at the same pace, we will protect 100% of our water supply in 2060 by the year 2030. That takes renewing the effort to protect the conservation easements. With regard to the SAWS Vista Ridge project, which is another diversification effort, that complements our water portfolio. That also includes now desalinization. We just broke ground on a desalinization project that will be the largest inland desalinization project of its kind in the United States, which will add another 16 to 30,000 acre-feet of water, which will be a huge amount of water to our portfolio over the next 2 decades. Very important. So let me talk a little bit about now the Vista Ridge project. I'm trying to go very quickly, and I know there's going to be questions, so I'll save some time for the end. The Vista Ridge project is an interbasin transfer. The state of Texas operates under what we call the rule of capture. So basically, water is treated as a private property right. So what we're doing with the Vista Ridge project is attempting to work with properties outside of San Antonio, in this case Burleson County, that have secured property rights and pump that water into San Antonio. It is going to be a paradigm change for San Antonio. It will bring in, at the peak of operation, 50,000 acre-feet of water, which, according to SAWS statistics, are about 20% of our water supply. So 20% of our water supply, again, we have the Edwards Aquifer underground. We need to continue to do all these things at the same time to secure our water. With regard to the Vista Ridge project, or this pipeline that I've been talking about, we're going to have to debate this as a public, so I will say that when it comes time to talk about it as a public, we should be realistic about it. This is a very new thing for San Antonio, piping water in from another area at this volume. So the things that I'll be looking for in terms of a good project that makes good sense for San Antonio are four things. Number one, we have to make sure that there is a co-commitment to conservation. When we're bringing in new water to secure our water future, we're talking about using water in the future. We're not talking about using more water now. So we've got to do everything we can to make sure we are conserving as well as we can. We're not buying water just to raise that gallons per capita. We're buying water to secure our future later on. In addition to that, there needs to be some regional responsibility shown in the project. We need to identify the impacts that happen to the community from which we're pulling the water. We also need to take into account the environmental impacts to the source of water and also to our community here. The third concept is financial responsibility, fiscal responsibility. Does it make good sense? Is it a good business deal for San Antonio? We have the right people in my mind to make sure that happens. They're negotiating risk out of the supply side, meaning that if we don't receive the water, we don't pay for the water. The other side of that risk, however, is the fact that if we do get the water, we're going to have to pay for the water. So we need to make sure that in 2014, 2015, actually 2020, when we're getting the water, if we don't actually need it now, then we have contracts in place, short-term contracts, to sell it. So that it doesn't all fall on the San Antonio ratepayer. And then the final one is a public process. I've talked about the fact that this is a paradigm change. We are not purveyors of water at the San Antonio water system. We are suppliers of water to our citizens in San Antonio and the San Antonio water system area. This whole idea of having a water supply and having open inventory, extra inventory, and selling it as part of our business plan is a different thing, and we need to talk about that as a public. We also need to talk about the rate impact it will have in San Antonio, because this is expensive water now. We're in a drought condition, and water, again, is in Texas and across this country. You can go to California, it's the same thing there. It's liquid gold. This is the bedrock of our economy. So we need to make sure that citizens are aware of the impact that having new water supply is going to have on them and their bills. In process is a very important thing. I've been assured that the SAWS executive team and the SAWS staff will be briefing us and council and briefing the public about this plan. And nothing will be voted on until there's full disclosure of all the details of the project. So that's the public process of the project. I hope you'll forgive me for talking fast. Water is something that we can talk about for hours. I wanted to touch on the highlights. Again, I think the real highlight here is that for the first time in San Antonio's history, we are making real moves into long-term water security. I think you have leadership on council, you have leadership in the SAWS staff and executive team that is moving us in the right direction, and you also have leadership in our environmental steward organizations that are keeping us all on the right path. All these things need to be taken into consideration, and I think we'll have a good solution that will make water continue to be an economic advantage for San Antonio, just like it was 400 years ago. So with that, I'd like to take any questions that